Hello, my name is Devin Engel, and I'm one of the business analysts here at Rapid Point of Sale. And today I'm going to give you a quick overview of our AIQ email marketing connector. AIQ is an email marketing platform that specializes in regulated industries, so this is an especially good choice for our clients who sell firearms or other regulated products. We're going to dive right in with an example of a customer that we have already synced from Counterpoint up to AIQ. Here's an example of a customer record. This customer has a customer type of cash and a name type of person. We have first and last name, an address populated, and email address information. If we click here on the AIQ customer button, we'll see their AIQ customer information. Since this customer has already been synced to AIQ, we already have the contact ID returned and saved into Counterpoint. We also have note that we've sent up the email address and that this customer last synced on March 10th. If we take a look at this customer in AIQ, when we first open AIQ, we'll land on their dashboard page. We can come here to the customer and we can search by customer number. Here we see again that customer name and email address. If we scroll down, we'll see that they have a customer type of C, which means a cash customer. If they were an AR customer, this would be a value of A for AR, accounts receivable. We see that email address, the mailing address, the same contact ID, a note that this was pushed up from Counterpoint using the REST API, and the source ID is the Counterpoint customer number. In addition, we see that AIQ has some details about this customer, some of their shopping information, including the fact that they have one sale that is pushed up to AIQ. If we come up here to the History tab, we see that this customer's had a sale, and we can expand that and we can look at this detail. This information can be used to inform your marketing strategies. We want to look at this ticket and compare it to what we have in Counterpoint. Here's our ticket detail. If we start here on this main ticket tab, we'll see that same customer number. And if we click on the Bill To tab, we'll see this customer detail represented here again. The interesting piece here will be this lines information, which aligns here with what we've pushed up to AIQ. There are a few important things to note. First, we are currently not able to push up taxes or fees to AIQ, so what's represented here as the total does not include taxes and fees. It is going to be the actual subtotal from the ticket. This receipt number is actually our document ID, which does align with the document number in Counterpoint. And currently, we do not have employee information mapped. So if you wanted to know which user rang this ticket in Counterpoint and you wanted that mapped up to this employee field, we could sync that. You'll notice that the date timestamp on the ticket is a little bit different from the actual. We do push up the actual value to AIQ, but AIQ does a little bit of manipulation to the data. And in this case, they've updated the date and time a little bit. In here, you'll see the lines are represented, the product titles, which comes from the description. You'll see the brand, and this brand can be any mapped field from Counterpoint related to the items. In this case, we were mapping the vendor. So if we take a look at this item, for example, this green tea, and we see that the value, oops, didn't mean to cover that, is 10,003, and that is our primary vendor number. That's our tea vendor. If you had a different field in Counterpoint that you wanted to sync up as the brand, we could change the mapping for that. And in this case, right here, AIQ is displaying the subcategory. So we can see the subcategory is green. The overall category was T. I'll show you a different spot in AIQ where it actually displays the category if you're interested in that rather than the subcategory. Let me move this back out of the way. We can see what's been synced here is the extended price, is the line times the quantity, but there was just one of each purchased. Whereas with the jar of orange marmalade, a quantity of 3 was purchased. So while the line price is $9.99, the extended price is the $29.97. And you also see the quantity information listed here. So that gives you a little overview of what is synced from Counterpoint up to AIQ related to customers and tickets. We can also go back here to this general. And as I was telling you, the subcategory is what's showing on the document history up here. But here you can actually see some category information. So it's listed here in the shopping habits, but it's also listed here under categories. So you see this person has purchased 3 items in the jam jelly category. Those were the 3 jars of orange marmalade, and 2 units in the tea category. That was the black tea and the green tea from that ticket. If the customer had purchased multiple tickets over time, you would see this data get populated with additional details and a whole bunch more information, and that would accumulate over time. We push up the raw data to AIQ, so it's really important to note that then AIQ takes that information and manipulates it. It's combining it with data and details from other sources if you have linked other sources to AIQ, for example. Also, I just want to scroll up here just to call out that Rapid does not push any information to this section regarding signing up for the AIQ loyalty member program. We don't opt customers in or send any consent statuses related to text messages or emails or mobile push or age gating. AIQ interprets all of this information and assigns these things themselves. So if you have questions about how these values are assigned, you can reach out to your AIQ rep directly. But overall, AIQ consolidates the data and makes it possible to send targeted email marketing. And if you have questions about how to specifically create and send those emails, please reach out to your AIQ rep. They will be best suited to help you with that information. Let's take a look at another customer. Here is customer 1-1-07, and the interesting thing about this customer is that they are an AR customer. Let me bring up that customer here in AIQ. And we can see that this customer has actually had 3 sales pushed up to AIQ. We have a list of products that actually spans a couple of pages. There's up to 8 results here. We can see here that the customer type is A. Let me bring up that customer record again just to highlight this point. This customer is an accounts receivable customer, so that's why this was pushed up with the A value. Try to get those both on the screen for you at the same time. And this customer has a phone number, a mobile phone number that has been pushed up. They also have an email address, and we can see that same contact ID that would be available on their AIQ customer record when we click this button. I apologize, I have 2 screens, so I am dragging some windows back and forth as we work here. Let's go ahead and take a look at this customer's customer zoom, and we can see their ticket history. We actually see that this customer has 5 tickets recorded in Counterpoint. However, 2 happened back in January, and this was before we started syncing information up to AIQ. Now, we could set our configuration to sync this historical ticket information if we wanted to, but in this case, we have not done that. We've only started syncing the tickets from March. So we have 3 tickets here, and we can open one of those if we'd like. going to pop open on my other screen, and we can take a look and compare this to the ticket available in AIQ. Okay, so once again, we've got on our Bill To tab our customer information, and we have our line information. So we can see that we synced up some iris bulbs with this transaction. And we can see here, for example, in this view ticket history, the subcategory was fall plant for this one, and there was no subcategory for the other items. So that's why that is blank here. And we see again that we're syncing up the extended price, so the $3.60 and the $12 from our ticket history. Also, if you're looking for this information in your view ticket history and it's not appearing, just right click here, click on column designer. You can add these fields. And once again, we see that we have the store information, the ticket total again being the subtotal from Counterpoint, and the date time is a little different than what you're going to see in Counterpoint, just based on when AIQ processed this information. If you wanted to look at some of the other transaction data in here, you could. Again, we're seeing this subcategory detail. Here we had a black tea, synced up the quantity information, and we can look at the other ticket as well. Okay, there's one more customer that I'd like to show you. Okay, the important part here to realize is that this customer has a company name, Sweet Bee Honey Company, and they have a first and last name in Counterpoint. Currently, we're only able to push the first and last name up to AIQ, so that's why you'll see the first and last name represented here and not the customer name. This applies to Counterpoint customers where the name type is business. Let's also take a look at one of this customer's transactions. So they had a sale, and let me bring up that same sale from Counterpoint. And here we can see on the lines that there was a discount, a line discount amount of $1.50. So if you're entering discounts into Counterpoint, these will show up sometimes as line discounts, or if you're doing an overall document discount, that would appear down here. That line discount amount is taken into account into the extended price. So you can see that the extended price was pushed up to AIQ. So if you're hoping that discounts will be pushed to AIQ, they're automatically included within this price value. I want to show you an example of a document discount really quickly. For that, we'll have to move to a different customer. Okay, here's our other customer, and we can see here on the Lines tab that we have a line discount amount of $1 on the sweet tea with the lemon flavor, and that brought the extended price down to $2.83, which is reflected here. But also we have a document discount of $5, and that has been applied against all of the extended prices. So these have been adjusted to account for that. So if you add up the 67 cents, the $2.83, and the $6.71, you get the $10.21 here as the total. So the document discount is actually applied to each of these line prices. Therefore, we are able to push up the true extended price, including the discounts, to AIQ. If you have any questions about this, please reach out. We would be happy to explain it in more detail. Now I want to dive back into Counterpoint. Let's take a look at this from this perspective of creating a new customer while you're working in touchscreen. Now that we have our customer information entered, let's click Save. And let's just ring a quick ticket here. We will tender this to cash. Now let's go take a look at this customer in Counterpoint. We'll close out of touchscreen. We'll open that customer record. And here you can see the information that we entered in touchscreen when we were ringing that ticket. If we click up here on the AIQ Customers button, we can also see that an AIQ customer record has already been created for this customer. So to be clear, this over here is the Counterpoint customer record. This is the additional AIQ customer record. This was auto-created when we saved this customer initially in touchscreen due to a configuration setting. If you don't want the AIQ customer records to be automatically created, meaning you don't want your customers to be automatically synced to AIQ, then there's a configuration setting we can adjust and you can instead create these customer records manually. Let's just take a look at this one in a little more detail. We can see that this customer does not yet have an AIQ contact ID. That's because it hasn't yet synced to AIQ. Once it does successfully sync, the AIQ contact ID will be populated. Right now, this customer is in a sync status of 1. A sync status of 0 means that the customer is fully synced, nothing is pending, there are no changes to be synced to AIQ right now. However, a sync status of 1 means that the customer was either recently created or updated, and it will sync on the next run of the connector. You won't see customers in a sync status of 2 very often. This will typically happen when customers are actively in the sync queue, and since AIQ customers are only synced once in the evening, this won't be a common status. A sync status of 9, however, indicates that the customer attempted to sync to AIQ and encountered some sort of error and needs remediation. So if you see sync statuses of 9, reach out to Rapid. We're happy to help you resolve those. Working our way down, we can see that the email address is populated on the AIQ customer record from this email address 1. If you have a preference to instead sync email address 2, which would be over here on the Contacts tab, to the AIQ customer record, there is a configuration setting to adjust that. Also, you have a choice between syncing either phone 1 or mobile phone 1 to this phone number field. That's another config setting. Here we are syncing phone 1 to the AIQ phone number field. When you choose those configuration settings, they apply to all customers. So you can't choose them on a per customer status, but you can choose them for your entire account. Let's go take a look at those configuration options in a little more detail. We'll come over here to Connectors, AIQ, and we're going to click this AIQ Overall Configuration. Here is our AIQ configuration record. This really important tip: you need to click the forward or the next button in order to access your AIQ record, your AIQ configuration record. The AIQ configuration settings that are the most important are these 4 right here. That auto create that I was telling you about, that is set here. The send if no email or phone is also an important status. Because this is unchecked, we are only going to be sending customers up to AIQ if they have either an email address or a phone number. If you want to send all of your customers to AIQ, regardless of whether or not they have an email or phone, then we would check this. We'll go over these configuration settings in more detail during your configuration meeting when you first get the connector, and we also have some documentation that will go over them in more detail as well. And then these 2 settings here, the email one and the phone one, or adjusting these to be email 2 or mobile phone 1, this is where these would get changed on the AIQ configuration record. Pretty much all of these other settings either have to do with connecting to the AIQ platform with your credentials, or they involve some sort of optimization, so you don't really have to worry about those. Let's take a look at some other config options here. Here's the AIQ account store mapping. If you only have one location in Counterpoint, then only that one location's tickets will be pushed to AIQ. However, if you have multiple locations, we can configure one or more to have tickets pushed up to AIQ. In this example, the client is pushing both Store 101 and Store 102 tickets to AIQ. Keep in mind that only posted tickets are pushed to AIQ. That means for most clients, they've rung tickets throughout the day, they post their drawers in the evening, then that information is pushed to AIQ. AIQ does a lot of data aggregation and manipulation, and so it actually takes about 24 hours for that information to show up in AIQ. So keep that in mind when you're looking for the data. It's not going to be there instantly. You have to post your drawers and wait for AIQ to process it. These other two buttons are Run AIQ Connector, which this is a manual run button. You should never need to use this. Our programmers use it during testing and troubleshooting. And Mark all messages as read. This is used in the event that you're getting bombarded with alert messages about the connector. This sometimes happens when there's a power outage or internet's down and the connector is repeatedly trying to connect to the AIQ platform and it's struggling to do so. You might get a whole bunch of messages that are popping up in Counterpoint letting you know. If that's annoying, you can just click this button, mark them all as read, and it will stop the pop-ups. If we go up one level here, we're back in our AIQ homepage. We can see that we have access to the AIQ customer records, just like we did when we were looking at the Counterpoint customer record and we click the button, except here we can see all of them and we can just flip through them one at a time, or we could put this in table view and review them all. Here we can see that most recent customer we just created and that it's in a sync status of 1. Does not have an AIQ contact ID yet. We can also see customers that might be flagged as invalid email or invalid phone that might need to be reviewed. We can move these columns around if that's helpful. You can always just drag and drop them. And in addition, we can filter this list. So if we just wanted to see those AIQ customers in a sync status of 1, we could see the one we just created. Or, for example, customers that are stuck in a sync status of 9 because we want to investigate the customers who have an error and need to be remediated. Likewise, we can also look at the AIQ item records. So anytime a customer in Counterpoint has an AIQ customer record, and a ticket is rung for that customer, there are items on that ticket. Those items are also synced up to AIQ, and AIQ records information about them that you can then use in your email marketing. So here you can see a list of all of the items that have been synced to AIQ so far. You can also view this in table view just like you did the customers if that's helpful. Okay, we just looked at the overall configuration button. Let's now come down to the Counterpoint to AIQ mapping. We have 3 mapping buttons here: Customers Up, Items Up, and Documents Up. This lists all of the fields that we are pushing from Counterpoint up to AIQ about each of these things. And if you have any custom settings, they'll be reflected in here as well. Let's start with the AIQ field mapping for Customers Up. It will open like this, but I think this is another situation where it's easiest to view in table view. Here we list every Counterpoint field that's being pushed up to AIQ and what it's matched with on AIQ. So you have full visibility to the mapping. We can also take a quick look at items up. Same thing, easiest to view in table view. And we see all of the fields that are in Counterpoint that are being sent to, or which fields they're mapped to in AIQ. And the same thing for documents. A ticket is a type of document. So this is why it's referred to as documents up. In this situation, it means posted tickets up. And so we can see that all of the fields that are being pushed are coming from point of sale ticket history, either the ticket history header information or the ticket history line information. And we see that this client, for example, is syncing up their vendor information to the AIQ brand field. You might have something different mapped this way. If you want any changes to these mapping tables, it's best to reach out to Rapid, have us do it. It's usually a pretty quick change. We do have to work within the limitations of the AIQ APIs. So if there's something that you want to send to AIQ, but AIQ does not yet accept that level of detail, you'll have to work with AIQ to have them expose it first, and then we can sync it up. However, there's a lot of fields that we can push to, so just reach out and we can let you know what's possible. And if it's complicated, we can talk about a quote, especially if there's something that needs to get calculated first before it can be pushed up. That's what these calculated column query fields are here for. All right, the final thing I want to show you in this is the AIQ Monitoring Tools. This is just a quick way to see which of your customers or items or documents have synced to AIQ or might be in an error status. Let's start with the customer status view. Again, this is another one where I think it's easiest to view in table view. So here we can see that we have 109 customers in a status of 0. We have 1 customer in a status of 1 and 1 customer in a status of 2. If we come over here to our items, same thing, we can put this in table view. And here we can see that we have 105 items that have been synced to AIQ. We don't have any items in other statuses, so there's no other rows on this table. But if we did have some that were in a status of 1 or 2 or 9, there would be multiple rows here. The documents queue looks a little different. This is another one that I also think is easiest to view in table view. And here we have the customer number, the document ID value, the queue ID, which is just the order in which it was synced, as well as the queue status. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, we can see all of our tickets are currently in a status of 0, meaning they have already synced to AIQ. Keep in mind, though, that AIQ may take up to 24 hours to process that data, so you might not see them in AIQ right away. The very last button you'll see here is the quantity on hand view. AIQ specifically requested that we send the quantities in Counterpoint up to AIQ because they can use this information to help you with your marketing efforts. If there's an item that you have and there's quantity to be sold, they can help you market that specific item more effectively. The quantities here, if you just have one location, will just be the quantity for that single location. However, if you have multiple inventory locations in Counterpoint, we do have a configuration that will allow us to define which of those locations should be summed and then have the total quantity on hand for that item sent to AIQ. So if we open this, this is another one where I think table view is easiest. And you're probably getting tired of hearing me say table view, but table view is always great for these types of things. You can see that the location group we have set up is called CRM_AIQ. Any locations that are part of this location group will have the quantity of that item summed and then is displayed over here. So that's why it's listed as quantity on hand sum, because this could include multiple locations. So as you can see, some of these are negative, some of them are positive. We're sending all of this up to AIQ, and then they can use that information to help you do a better job with your marketing. Before we end this, I want to show you one more configuration setting. Let's come back here to AIQ Overall Configuration and Tools. Select AIQ Configuration. Remember, you always have to press this forward button. And here we have the Auto Create AIQ Persona. That's the AIQ customer record. We talked about this earlier. Let's unlock this. We're going to set this to no, and let's save that setting. So now we're no longer going to automatically create the AIQ customer record. It means we have to create it manually. Let's go into touchscreen and I'll show you how this works. Okay, now that we're in Counterpoint, let's do the same thing we did before. Let's go ahead and add a new customer. go ahead and save the customer. We'll go ahead and ring a ticket. We'll just tender this to cash really quickly, close out. All right, let's close out of here. Let's go look at that customer now. Okay, here's the customer we just created in Counterpoint when we were in touchscreen. And if we come up here and click the AIQ customer record, we see it's entirely blank. It doesn't even have an account name populated. That's because the AIQ customer record was not automatically created. Customers that have an AIQ customer record are synced to AIQ. The customers who do not have an AIQ customer record are not synced to AIQ. So having or not having the AIQ customer record is what controls who is synced or which Counterpoint customer records are synced up to AIQ. If we want to create an AIQ customer record, we can do that manually. We can just come in here, find our account name. Unless you have multiple AIQ accounts, there'll just be the one. And if we click save, we can see all this information is immediately populated. It pulls it in from the Counterpoint customer record. The name, the email address because we have it configured to pull in email 1, the phone number because we have it configured to use phone 1. All of that shows up here. When the customer successfully syncs up to AIQ, this contact ID field will also be populated. You basically have two choices here with AIQ connector. You can either do this process manually, create the AIQ customer record for just the customers that you want to sync up, or we can automatically create the AIQ customer record for all customers. Just as you create them in Counterpoint, this information gets populated as well. And if then there's a customer whose information you don't want sent to AIQ, you can come in here and delete the AIQ customer record. And once you delete it, the information stops syncing to AIQ, so no information is sent. That's the difference between the auto enroll or using the manual functionality to create the AIQ customer record. If you have any more questions about that, we can answer them when we discuss your initial configuration. We look forward to you using and embracing the AIQ connector. We're really excited about the new opportunities this is going to provide to our clients, especially those in regulated industries. Let us know if you have any questions. Just reach out, support@rapidpos.com. Thanks.